Welcome to the Kourting Happiness podcast. This is a space where self-care becomes part of your day. A space where you learn evidence-based strategies to help your life, share it with those you love, and cultivate well-being at work. I'm your host, Dr. Kourting Alston. I'm a former news director, television reporter turned happiness scholar, TEDx speaker, and transformational trainer. I also understand hardships. While working my dream job in television, I lived a nightmare suddenly becoming a young widow after 86 days of marriage. I became committed to learning more about resilience, healing, and happiness. This is how I discovered my area of research, which is positive psychology. Now I'm living my calling of training individuals and organizations on happiness. And my new chapter begins with being happily engaged. The Kourting and Kourting Happiness is about a true courtship. I like to say commitment with happiness. The K in Kourting stands for the vulnerability of sharing my story, inspirational interviews with phenomenal people, the infusion of positive psychology, and so much more. You'll learn how to commit to your well-being one episode at a time. I hope you subscribe and share. So, are you ready? Let's get started. Welcome to episode 46. I'm Dr. Kourting Alston. I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to talk about the transformative power of self-discovery and how it can help with unlocking happiness. Our latest guest in the Kourting Happiness studio truly radiates positivity. We're talking with Dmitria Burby. She is a healer and author. Her book is titled Return to the Light Within: How I Woke Up, Rediscovered Who I Am, and Found Happiness. Her title truly exudes who she is. She helps her clients reconnect and rediscover themselves, and she will help you do just that and more. So, let's dive in. So happy that you're here. Thank you so much for joining the Kourting Happiness podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to join you in this.
I love this because I believe we met on Instagram, right?
We did, yes.
And I had been, first off, I love your Instagram page. It is incredible in regards to all of your inspirational posts. And so I'm so happy and excited about this discussion with you because you have an incredible transformative background. You were a successful corporate executive, and now you're an incredible healer. How did you come into this calling? How did it happen?
Yeah, I hit a point in my life where I had accomplished really everything that I had wanted to accomplish in my life. I was successful in my career. I had, created an amazing family with my husband. We had stability financially. We sort of had everything, all the ingredients that I should need to be happy. And I had a realization that I wasn't, and I couldn't quite figure out why. There was nothing for me to complain about in my life. And yet I was really struggling on accessing that joy and happiness that I saw other people really being able to access. And so I set out on a journey. I did not know that it would land me in this place by any means, but I did set out on a journey to try to discover how I could be more happy and joyful in my everyday life. And so that started it. And that was really the point where I asked, who am I and what do I actually enjoy doing in life, rather than what are the things that I should be doing in life that I think will eventually bring me happiness?
I love those questions. In terms of who am I, and then being able to challenge yourself, because I think one of the things that, I will say this, I have talked about this often, and meaning I have mentioned this author so many times. Her name is Bronnie Ware. She's written a book called 5 Regrets of the Dying. And what I love is that she shares, what people are saying, individuals who are at the end of life. One of the regrets is, number one, is having a life that's true to myself. And I love your question because to me, it speaks so much in terms of being true to yourself. First off, how did you begin to construct that question? And how did you really honor yourself by being true to yourself?
I think that's so spot on. Living a life aligned with who you are is the ultimate goal. And I realized I didn't know who I was. So it was, a summer day, and my husband invited me out to do something with the kids. And I was like, no, I don't really want to do that. I was just in a funk or whatever. And he was like, what do you like to do? What makes you happy? And I was like, oh, I kind of was paralyzed in the moment and thought like, oh, I don't know. Like he was like, we'll do whatever you want to do that will make you happy and bring you some joy. And I couldn't come up with an answer. I didn't have enough connection with who I was at that point in my life to be able to articulate, oh, I want to go do this thing and it's going to bring me joy because of this. And it was, a nothing moment in our life, but it was really impactful for me because it was that first moment where I realized that I was disconnected from knowing myself. So somehow that moment morphed into this realization that, well, how can I be happy and live a life aligned with who I am if I don't know who I am? There's a critical piece missing there.
So, it's interesting. You talk about that disconnection, right? So how do you go about connecting? How do you go in terms of connecting really a greater sense of yourself to be able to really understand maybe what your next steps are, or maybe what your journey is, or maybe even questioning what the journey was to get you now on the path, right, of living and true to yourself?
Yeah, I started with that question of who am I? And I listed out, I thought, okay, I'm, super type A, organized, successful. I can take on anything and do anything. And I was like, I can figure this out in an afternoon. So I sat down, I, had a coffee, and I was like, I'm going to write out all of the things that I am, and then I'll know. And it felt like so obvious to me that I would write out like, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a sister, I'm a, job title, whatever, all my accomplishments. And I got done with that and I was like, that doesn't answer it. That's not actually who I am. Those are the roles that I play in my life, but that's not who I am. And so that helped me get to this place of, okay, there's something deeper here that I don't really understand. I started to read books on the topic of self-discovery, on different people's stories, on, all the self-help that I could consume to try and get at this answer of who I was. And that was really helpful and sustained me for probably 4 or 5 years of my journey. Wow. Where I was able to say, okay, I'm slowly starting to understand that there's something more than just these external accolades or definitions of who I am. There's something inside of me that helps me really understand who I am, that I'm expressing out rather than being defined by the external in.
I love that you talk about that question, because as a person who's a happiness scholar who focuses in on positive psychology clearly, and then actually my dissertation was on meaningful work, and I looked at meaningful work, and I love researching on the topic of meaningful work. And one of the things meaningful work scholars ask is, who am I? And so that really helps us understand levels of purpose. So how did that open the doors to your purpose, or better yet, your calling?
Yeah, I mean, I think once you ask those questions of the universe, whatever religion or spiritual, beliefs you have, if once you put that out into the ether, there is an answer that will come to you. And for me, it was like the right books came into play, the right people, the right conversations. It was just this nice progression of information that allowed me to step along that journey. And then finally, I was a shaman, fell into my lap in the time I least expected it. I wasn't looking.
That happens every day.
Know what I was, yeah, right. Like I was like, oh, okay. It was several years ago, so it wasn't quite as like popular or like known as it is today. And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, what's the harm? I'll try anything, And so I met with the shaman, and and had this really intense experience and had this moment, maybe a spiritual awakening, some people would call it, but this really defined moment where I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much more to who I am than the acts that those roles that I play in life. And so how do I stay connected to who I am inside and align that with how I want to actually self-express? And as soon as I connected with that inner being, that inner knowing of like, I am a divine spirit, I can shine my light out into the world, I immediately connected in with happiness and joy. And I kind of felt like high, to be honest, like, or like my sister was like, you are really happy. It's kind of odd. And I was like, I know, isn't it great? And she was like, okay, like this is a like interesting turn of events for you. But really that helped me understand, like, I am so excited to realize that it is possible to access joy and happiness. There is a way for people to do this. And I think before that moment, I knew it was possible for other people, but I wasn't 100% sure it was possible for me because I'd never experienced it in my life. And so that knowing that somebody that had lived, 30 plus years, not experiencing joy and happiness in that way, all of a sudden had that unlocked for them, I thought, I have to tell other people that this is possible. I just felt this calling of I have to share this information with people because it feels so good when you're happy. It feels so good when you're connected to yourself. And that sort of started the ball rolling on everything else that I do.
It does feel so good, right? And it's great that you wanted to, and you continue to really, share all of these incredible teachings in regards to your own happiness journey. And what I love is that you talk about connection and you also talk about self-discovery. And how, because all of this speaks to self-discovery, right? How has that really served you in terms of understanding the value of self-discovery, and how do you help other people in regards to self-discovery? Like, what does that even look like? You shared the list, which I will tell you this, Dmitria, I am a woman. I love lists. I was a little girl. My mother goes, she always had lists in her bed. So when you said that, I was like, yes, I can relate.
Yes, it's relatable.
We are sisters. Yes.
Yeah.
So how does a person even begin? Is it the list? And yes, and how do you go about, introducing that to your clients?
Yeah, I think that it starts inside. There's some sort of trigger that opens you up to wanting to learn more about yourself, wanting to know more, that there's more to life than what you've experienced to date. And so there's that first initial step that you have to have that desire. Then once you get to that point, I would say there's several amazing books. I'm sure you know many of them, but to me, it was just reading and understanding and absorbing other people's experiences. So that was the first step, so that I could understand the landscape of what that looked like for other people and start to connect my own story to theirs. The second thing I did is I started to meditate. And when I first started meditating, I was like, this is not for me. I'm like type A, always on the go, full of anxiety, like a million to do, things on my list, right?
Yes.
Like it was crazy. And I couldn't clear my brain. And I was like, this isn't possible to clear my brain. Like that's not a thing that's accessible to me. But I kept trying, and ultimately I switched my goal in meditation from being to clear my mind to actually focusing on connecting to myself. And that shift worked really well for me because it wasn't about getting to a state of emptiness. Mm-hmm. It was just about a state of connecting inward. So it was almost like I tricked my type A brain, like that, having to do something constantly. I focused it on how do I connect into my heart space rather than like focused on all of the things that I needed to do or judgment about myself or others, and just focused on how do I feel my heart and feel love more. So that was really, really helpful as well.
I love that in terms of really being able to focus inward and really being able to connect with yourself. You mentioned books. What are some of the books that really, because I'm curious about the books that really help you in your transformation?
The first book I read actually was Present Over Perfect. And I am forgetting the name of the author at this moment. But what I loved about that book is that it was accessible for me in those moments when I felt like my life was too crazy to handle. And she really talks about how she transformed her own life by letting go of perfection and just being present in the moment. And the underlying theme is creating boundaries and learning how to say no, and actually honoring yourself and how much energy you have, so that the things that you do take on, you do in a really authentic and present way.
I love that because the energy that we have is so important, right? And also boundaries are so key to
Yeah.
that. I always tell people boundaries are our besties. And
Yes, I love that.
it's it's like it's really important for us to be able to have those boundaries in place so we can protect our ourself and really be able to not feel so overwhelmed that we feel so disconnected. So I love that you talk about the importance of that, and also thank you for sharing that book with us as well. So as I'm sitting here talking to Demetria, I am looking in her room and her space there, and I'm immediately drawn to this incredible wallpaper. For those of you who are listening, for some of you who may actually have a chance to see this, you will be able to see the beauty that is behind her. So the space you mentioned is where you meditate. You kind of converted it to meditation space / office. How
Yeah.
important is it for you to have a space to be able to connect with self?
It's so important. I mean, ironically, my husband was like, "Hey, we have this extra room in the house. I'm going to turn it into my meditation room." And I was like, "That's a great idea." And then, it's my meditation room. And he always laughs. He's like, "Hey, you're in my meditation room again." And I was like, "I know. I'm sorry, I took over. I fully took over it. It's like totally mine." But it is so important. It is the energy in this room is really connected to me, and I just can come in here and decompress and step away from my kids or like any of the chaos that's happening in the house at any given moment, and really focus. And ironically, I do a lot of my work in here. So it's all connected to being present and mindful, and so being in this energetic space is really important to me. And I think every morning I meditate when I wake up. I meditate right before I go to sleep at night. So it's a big part of my daily practice to meditate, and really going back to reconnecting with myself and giving myself the opportunity to have perspective on what's important in my life and what's important for the day. And that to me is the key reset that happens as I meditate each time.
How do you go about determining what's important for your day?
It is the reminder that it's nothing that happens in that day. It's actually, for me, the most important things are creating deep connections with the people that I love and care about. That's my number one goal in my life, to be able to do that. So it's remembering that it's not the minutia of like packing lunches or running here or making sure that this is perfect or that this goes exactly to plan. It's how do I do all of that and maintain really deep, loving connections with people?
I love that because it really comes back to human connection, right? And the
Mhm.
value of that, and the really the level of intimacy as it relates to that connection, and vulnerability too, right? In terms of that connection. I love that. That being, a measure opposed to the other measures that I think we are kind of conditioned to think,
Mhm.
okay, check, especially if you're a list person, right? Like like we are, right? It's like check.
Yes.
But this is about really checking in to connection.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely. I
I love.
mean, it's so easy to get lost in, I accomplished all of these things today, especially for me. It's very easy for me to say, like, look at everything I've accomplished today. Look, I'm a great person. I'm amazing. I've done, 47 things for all of you. But if I've missed connecting with my daughter or my husband or, the boys, it's like, then I've missed the whole point of my day. So I can feed them and be on the phone doing something and take care of all their needs, but I haven't really accomplished my goal for the day, which is to have memorable moments with each person.
Do you feel that you're able to have more memorable moments now being a healer and being able to work with clients than when you were working in the corporate world?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think often about how different I would be if I went back into the corporate world, knowing what I know now.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I mean, my whole corporate career was about accomplishment, right? Checking the box. What are the deliverables? Are the deliverables there on time? How do we make this more efficient? How do you get more profit out of it? All of those things. And I was constantly battling, how do we connect with our customers? How do we do what's best for the organization and what's best for the customer, and find the place where those two things meet? And that, I think, is why I was so successful in the corporate world, because I focused on that and had this mentality of, high output, high efficiency. So I think that was my key to success there. But I realized that I'm only one person in quite a large machine, and I really needed to find that deeper connection and slow way down. And so that shift happened when I left the corporate world, and it unlocked the ability to really feel into other people's heart space and feel into their energy, and then use that connection to support their own growth and their own self-discovery, which to me is super fulfilling.
Absolutely. I am so curious because I really treasure the work that you're doing. And I love that it's so much in terms of really kind of diving in deeper as it relates to levels of ourself. Can you share some of your success stories of some of your clients, and in terms of the point, the part where they've gone from, point A, right? And here they
Mhm.
are to point connection. Can I say that, right? In terms of really, if that's a thing, right?
Yeah.
Being able to
Yeah.
really kind of, get closer to and diving into, their center, their self.
Yeah. I mean, I have one of my favorite stories is a new mom, who came to me, and she was just overwhelmed with being a new mom. Anybody out there that has, an infant can understand and relate. It is overwhelming because you're all of a sudden, your body's like really messed up from pregnancy and all of the hormones and everything. You're not getting any sleep, and then you have this child that you're trying to keep alive, literally, and it's overwhelming. And so she came to me and she was just like, I feel, pretty despondent, and I'm not really sure. I love my child. I love my daughter so much, and she brings me happiness, but I don't feel that same connection that I used to have. And so we worked for some time, and a big key to how I work with my clients is really just bringing some of the hidden parts of themselves. It's almost like parts that people, you kind of know in the back of your mind, but you keep pushing it off, or I'll do it later, or not now, all those things, and helping bring conscious awareness to them, and then creating space in your life for you to be able to self-express that part of you. And so with her, she had said that she in the past was an artist, and that she really enjoyed that in her youth, and she wasn't sure, she was like, I'm not even sure why I'm telling you this. And I was like, oh, I know. I know why you're telling me. And so we came up with a plan for how she could actually integrate painting back into her life in these small, 1 hour a week. So it was really, consumable for her in her life that she was living in the moment, and not disruptive. and how we built that over time so that she felt like she could really connect to that. And I thought like, oh, this is, it's pretty cut and dry. Like, oh, she was an artist when she was young and she's bringing that part back out and expressing it. And that's that. But what it came from that work was that she actually had some concerns about how she didn't really have a single job her whole life. She kept going into different fields and she couldn't understand why she was a linguist when she, wanted to do artwork. And so she had all these different paths in her life and she didn't have the thread to connect them.
Wow.
And she was having a lot of concern about who she was and self-doubt about why she wasn't accomplishing anything with all of these different components that she had explored in her life. And so we did a lot of work around understanding how all of those things that she had explored in her life actually built to allow her to get back into painting and actually help her become a more profound painter and artist, right? Her linguistics actually helped her understand all the different meanings and interpretations of something so that as she expressed art, she could actually take all of those different facets of a meaning and integrate it into the artwork. And so it was a very simple exercise in some ways, just reintroducing art into her life, but it went much deeper because of all of the self-doubt and judgment that we were able to get rid of along the way.
It's interesting. You're so right because as I'm hearing you share this information and thinking about, this incredible transformative story in terms of, diving into art, but it also allowed her to not only dive into levels of herself, but it was able to, it would really allowed her, I should say, to, I love what you shared in terms of being able to build almost like confidence and, and start, because things start to tear at us, right? And
Mhm.
sometimes when we're dealing with that inner critic that may say, you can't do this or how dare you, I love that your approach in terms of really having her embrace something that she already loves, right? Or already enjoyed was making time for it and practicing self-compassion along the way. So
Yeah.
that I just think is incredibly just transformative and really says a lot in terms of kind of diving into things that speak to you and then
Mhm.
understanding how to kind of connect those dots. How challenging can it be, um if things that you've noticed with clients or with people in general? How challenging is it for us to kind of you know let go of that inner critic, for us to kind of really release, to really be able to center ourselves, to get to know ourself more?
Yeah, I think it is so challenging for us as humans to let go of that. We're programmed to criticize ourselves and judge and feel not good enough. And we're also, I think, trained at a very young age to not have boundaries and not create time for ourselves to rest and recover and recharge. And I think, the underlying concepts are so simple. Create some boundaries, create space for yourself to rest and recharge, and then do the things that bring you joy so that you actually refill your bucket so that then you have more to give. But our society, I think, especially in America, is so focused on your output and how much you're able to give. And there's not a lot of support in society for taking a break and making sure that you have enough energy to create the things that you want to create. And so much of the work that I do is actually helping people understand the value of rest, recharging, self-care, so that you can do the work of self-discovery, and then like all of the self-expression comes out, and that's where you get all of the production and all of the accomplishments come, but they come in a really easy way, right? So if we're forcing the I must do this and this, it feels really challenging and hard. But if you come from a place of, okay, I'm going to rest So if my goal is just to rest and you get rested, then everything else flows out of you with such ease that it doesn't feel so challenging. Your life doesn't have to feel so challenging. The work of self-discovery or finding happiness doesn't feel so hard. It's just, it flows really nicely into your life and sort of out of that inner place that you have.
I love that because you're right in terms of it just flowing opposed to feeling almost like a level of being trapped. Right. And
Mhm.
I love that. It's just like if just it allows you just to release and to
Yeah.
be able to kind of tap in deeper as it relates to connection and to happiness. You talk about helping people uncover the vibrancy of life that makes them feel whole and connected to one's life. I love that in terms of vibrancy of life. What
Mhm.
share with us what vibrancy of life looks like and why it's so important in terms of building connection.
Vibrancy of life to me is the ability to notice the small details that when you're in a hurry, you overlook. So for me personally, it's noticing the color of the hummingbirds outside my window shifting, or the beauty of the colors of the flowers that are outside as I'm taking a walk, right? It's like those small details that make your life a little brighter, and acknowledging them and then realizing, like, wow, life is really, really beautiful. And it doesn't have to be every moment of my life that I see those things, but every day there are several things that I take time to notice and appreciate that I got to see them in my day. So to me, that's sort of the vibrancy of life that can be overlooked. And if I go back earlier in my life before this transformation, everything felt really dull to me. Maybe once in a while would notice, beautiful colors in life, or, a hummingbird or something, but I wouldn't take the time to appreciate it and be grateful for that in my life. And everything felt just a little dull and boring and like monotone. And now it's like I get to see those moments of like, of height where I'm like, oh, okay, this thing is really quite unique and beautiful. And it came into my life for a reason that I don't really know, but I can appreciate. So that's the vibrancy of life that I talk about and feel like I experience. I think people just having the capacity to take time and slow down a little bit to be able to acknowledge it and see it, and then appreciate that you're in a place where you can slow down to see it and acknowledge it and appreciate it, right? It's like this circular loop that you're in,
Yes.
of gratitude.
Absolutely. I love that because it speaks to so many different levels of gratitude and also the importance of being present and being able to see all the beauty, in front of us. But it can be challenging if you are overwhelmed, if you are burnout, and
Mhm.
you are just, I love that you talked about the machine, right? In terms of, whatever structure you may be a part of, and you're feeling as if your machine, being a part of that machine, I should say, is constantly going. And I love that you give us permission in regards to saying, it's okay to slow down.
Mhm.
It's important to slow down. What do you say to an individual that's listening to us right now, who's working in corporate America, who is, feeling that level of burnout,
Yep.
who is constantly going, who is not as connected to their family as they want to be because they're focused so much on work. What would you say to that person that's listening now in terms of that individual questioning levels of their happiness?
Take time for yourself is my number one piece of advice. And I know for me, when I was in that place, that as I was realizing that I was on this path of self discovery and transformation, I would be running around campus and, so busy, I wouldn't be able to eat lunch or any food really. I might have like a little snack in the day, but there was just no time. And what I started to do was just pause in my stairwell by my office where people wouldn't see me. And I would just sort of like tuck into a corner. People would walk by me. I might like pretend like I was on my phone, and I would just breathe. I would just stay there for 2, 3 minutes, sometimes 5 minutes, if I could. And I would just breathe and reconnect into myself and offer myself some of that healing energy of, oh, okay, I do need a break and I deserve it. And nothing is going to fall apart in the world if I stop to literally breathe for 2 or 3 minutes. And so that's what I started with. And then I built that into longer periods of time where I might pop into a conference room for 10 minutes with the lights out and just sit and try and relax in and take a moment. I tried to create intentional space where I could take care of myself in that environment. So to me, those are the big things to start with, because you need to start by taking care of yourself and recharging your own battery before you can actually reach out and build those connections with your friends and family. Because if you're trying to be connected to your family, but you're completely depleted, they're going to feel that. So you want to come to that connection, to that interaction with true love and compassion in you. And for me, I needed to recharge that battery and have, refill that cup so that when I was texting, my kids or my husband, it actually felt good. It wasn't logistics. It was, hey, I actually have the time and space to check in with you and, want you to know that I love you. So how do I create that kind of space? And that took self-care for me.
Yeah, self-care is so important, right? In terms of, taking time out and, making sure that our well-being is being addressed. I love what you shared in regards to it starts with you, and
Mhm.
making sure that you are taking care of you and that you're filling your cup and thinking about what that cup needs, right? In terms
Mhm.
of being able to fill it. I love that. And I got to admit too, Demetria, I love the stairwell. Like, I feel like that should be a saying. Find a stairwell,
Yes. Yes.
and
I mean, it sounds ridiculous. I feel like the whole thing that I just said sounds ridiculous. I found a
but it
stairwell.
doesn't.
I stood there for 3 minutes and I was breathing. Like, those are
Yes.
all like really, I'm like, everybody should be able to breathe. What am I doing here? But the reality is we don't really take time to stop and take a deep breath in our day and just relax and let all of our muscles down, let the tension out. And even if you're only able to do it for 2 or 3 minutes a day, that is life changing. I will tell you, try it. It will change your life.
I love it. I just think you're right. It's so important in terms of the breathing aspect. And I love that in terms of trying it. You're absolutely right, because it will certainly change your life. I could talk with you all day because you just radiate so much light and
Oh, thank
wonderful
you.
energy. And, and I treasure this conversation with you. And so please tell our listeners where they can find you so they can continue to connect with you as well.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Courtney. It has been amazing to be on. You can connect with me on Instagram. My handle is at Luminance Healing, or on my website at luminancehealing.com.
And we will have Demetria's information on her episode page. But honestly, once you start to check out and follow her on Instagram, you will be really addicted as it relates to all of the wonderful information and positivity and really just incredible light that just radiates from her page. She is incredible. So the Kourting Happiness podcast, I ask every single guest this, and I'm looking forward to asking you because I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this. I always end it with, the Kourting Happiness podcast is about committing to one's well-being, right? And so how do you go about, committing? What is the one or two things that you do to commit to your well-being, or what you do to commit in terms of your overall happiness? especially as a healer?
Every day I take time to check in with myself and ask myself what I need. And I do one thing for myself every single day, whatever that is.
I love that. Check in with yourself and asking yourself what you need. Dmitria, thank you so much for checking in with us. You are phenomenal. I really enjoyed having this conversation with you, and I'm looking forward to seeing how you continue to share your gifts with the world and helping us all connect with a greater sense of ourselves. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's continue this conversation online. Email us at podcast@drkourtneyalston.com. That's podcast@drkourtneyalston.com. Join us on Instagram at Kourting Happiness. Don't forget, that's courting with a K. Also, I hope you join our private Facebook community. You can find us at Kourting Happiness Podcast Community. Our private Facebook group is a safe haven to share, meet more people looking to build positive relationships, focus on well-being, and create a happier life. Now, are you ready to spread happiness? We hope you subscribe and share this podcast with your family, friends, coworkers, and all the important people in your world. We release a new episode every Thursday. Congratulations on your continued commitment to your courting happiness journey. Thank you so much for listening. We want you to be well, be happier, and be kinder to yourself. We can't wait to see you next week.